Welcome to the world of decision-making, where the choices we make shape our present and future. Have you ever considered that the decisions you make are not entirely your own? Have you ever wondered why you choose one product over the other? Well, it turns out that decisions are not always based on rational thinking or logical analysis. According to a study by Harvard Business School, 95% of our purchase decisions are made subconsciously. Every decision we make has an impact on our life, and sometimes the consequences of our choices are not immediately evident. In this video, we'll explore the biases that affect our decision-making process. By understanding these biases, we can make better decisions and avoid common pitfalls. Let's dive in and learn how to make smarter decisions. Have you ever found yourself holding onto something that you no longer needed or wanted, simply because you owned it? Perhaps it was an old car, a piece of furniture, or even a job that you had outgrown. If so, you may have experienced the price of ownership bias, also known as the endowment effect. The endowment effect is a cognitive bias that leads us to overvalue things that we own. Once we have possession of something, we tend to place a higher value on it than we would if we didn't own it. This can make it difficult to part with our possessions, even if they are no longer useful or bring us joy. In business, the endowment effect can be used to influence consumers' decisions. Companies may offer free trials or samples, knowing that once people try their product, they will be more likely to value it and want to keep it. Marketers may also use the endowment effect to create a sense of ownership in customers. For example, by offering personalized products or allowing customers to customize their purchases, they can create a feeling of ownership and attachment. In our personal lives, the endowment effect can also affect our decision-making. For instance, people may hold on to old clothes, books, or other possessions because they feel a sense of attachment to them, even if they are no longer useful. Additionally, employees may stay in jobs they don't enjoy simply because they have invested time and effort into them and feel a sense of ownership over their position. Emotions can have a powerful influence on our decision-making process. When we're feeling angry, frustrated, or upset, we're more likely to make impulsive decisions that we may later regret. Similarly, when we're feeling happy or excited, we may make decisions that are overly optimistic. In short, our emotions can cloud our judgment and lead us astray. A study by researchers at Cornell University found that emotions can even influence how much we're willing to pay for a product. In the study, participants were shown either a sad video or a neutral video, and then asked to bid on a piece of chocolate. Those who had watched the sad video were willing to pay significantly more for the chocolate than those who had watched the neutral video. This shows that our emotions can impact our perception of value and influence our purchasing decisions. In business, emotions can play a significant role in negotiations. For example, a seller who appears overly eager or desperate to make a sale may be perceived as weak, and the buyer may be less likely to offer a fair price. On the other hand, a seller who appears confident and in control may be able to negotiate a better deal. In relationships, emotions can also play a significant role in decision-making. When we're in love or infatuated, we may overlook red flags or make decisions that are not in our best interest. By being aware of emotions and taking a step back, we can evaluate decisions objectively. We all like to think we make decisions based on our own values and beliefs, but the truth is, social norms have a powerful influence on our behavior. For example, let's consider the following scenarios. You may recycle because it's good for the environment, but you're also likely influenced by the fact that everyone in your community is doing it. You may donate to a particular charity because you believe in their cause, but you're also likely influenced by the fact that your peers and colleagues are supporting that charity. You may have started smoking or drinking because your friends were doing it, and it seemed like the norm. Social norms can also be used in business to influence consumer behavior. For instance, a company may use social proof to show that their product is popular among others by displaying customer reviews or ratings. This can influence potential buyers to make a purchase. Additionally, social norms can be used to promote positive behavior. For example, a company may use a social norm to encourage employees to take public transportation by providing incentives or rewards for doing so. In summary, social norms are a powerful force in shaping our behavior and decision-making. By being aware of these influences, we can make more informed decisions and avoid falling into the trap of following the crowd. Take a moment to reflect on the decisions you've made in the past week. How many of them were influenced by social norms? How many were truly your own independent choices? Anchoring is a cognitive bias that affects the way we make decisions. It refers to the tendency of people to rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making a decision. Let's say you're shopping for a new phone and you see two models side by side. One costs $500 and the other costs $1,000. Most people will perceive the $500 phone as less valuable because of the comparison with the $1,000 one. However, if the $500 phone was presented alone, it could be perceived as a good deal. This bias can be used by marketers and salespeople to manipulate consumers' perceptions and influence their buying decisions. For example, a store might price a product at $99.99 instead of $100 to give the impression that it is cheaper, even though the difference is only 1 penny. Similarly, a car salesman might start the negotiations by showing you the most expensive car on the lot, making the cheaper models seem more reasonable. On the other hand, people who are aware of this bias can use it to their advantage. For example, job seekers can ask for a higher salary when negotiating a job offer by anchoring the discussion with a higher number. Similarly, a seller can set a high asking price for a house to anchor the buyer's perception of its value. In conclusion, the anchoring bias can have a significant impact on our decision-making process. It's important to be aware of this bias and consider multiple sources of information before making a decision. As consumers, we should be cautious of the prices and promotions presented to us, and as decision makers, we should consider the potential influence of anchoring on our own judgments and those of others. The free effect bias is a powerful psychological influence on our decision-making process. It plays on our tendency to feel good when we receive something for free, even if the item is of little value to us. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Marketing Research found that consumers are more likely to choose a free item over a discounted item, even if the discounted item is a better value. Companies often use this bias to their advantage by offering free trials or samples to potential customers. By doing so, they give customers a taste of their product or service and hope that they will be enticed enough to make a purchase. For example, many software companies offer free trials of their products, allowing potential customers to test out the software before deciding to buy it. However, the free effect bias can also lead people to overspend or make impulsive purchases. For example, some stores offer buy one get one free deals, which can lead consumers to buy more than they need just to take advantage of the offer. Similarly, some credit card companies offer free gifts or cashback rewards, which can encourage consumers to overspend in order to earn those rewards. Have you ever made a decision by heavily relying on information or examples that were readily available to you, rather than seeking out a more comprehensive or representative set of information? This is what's called the availability bias. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, people tend to overestimate the frequency of rare events that they can easily recall from memory. For example, people might believe that airplane crashes are more common than car accidents, even though the opposite is true. Relying on the availability bias can have serious consequences, especially in business and policy making. For example, a company might decide to invest in a particular technology or product because of a few high-profile success stories, without fully considering the larger market trends or potential risks. Or a government might allocate resources to address a rare and sensationalized threat, instead of focusing on more common and pressing issues that are less visible but more impactful in the long run. Another thing to consider is the effect of the media. The media has a significant impact on what we perceive as important or relevant information. News outlets often report on the same stories repeatedly, which can cause those stories to stick in our minds and shape our opinions on a particular topic. This is especially true with social media, where we are often presented with a curated feed of content based on algorithms that cater to our personal preferences and interests. As a result, we may be exposed to only a limited range of opinions or viewpoints, leading to a distorted understanding of a given issue. The Pew Research Center found that 62% of Americans get their news from social media. This means that a large portion of the population is exposed to news stories that have been selected for them by algorithms, and which may not provide a comprehensive picture of events. When we take into account fake news, the availability bias can be exacerbated by this reliance on social media, as we are more likely to remember and rely on the stories that we see most often in our feeds. So, the question to ponder is, how can we become more aware of our own availability bias, And what can we do to ensure that we're making decisions based on a more comprehensive and accurate set of information? Have you ever felt like you had to keep investing time, money, or effort into something because you had already put so much into it? This is what's called the sunk cost fallacy, a cognitive bias where people feel they need to continue with a project or investment simply because they have already invested so much in it, regardless of the potential outcome. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, the sunk cost fallacy is a prevalent phenomenon, with 75% of participants exhibiting the bias in various scenarios. The consequences of the sunk cost fallacy can be significant, as it often leads to irrational decision-making. For example, individuals might continue to pour money into a failing business venture, simply because they have already invested a large sum. In other cases, people may stay in a failing relationship or job, believing that their investment of time and effort will eventually pay off, even if the evidence suggests otherwise. Businesses also fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy, with companies continuing to invest in projects that are no longer viable or profitable, simply because they have already invested a significant amount of time and resources. This can lead to a company pouring resources into a failing product, rather than cutting their losses and moving on to a more promising venture. Ultimately, the sunk cost fallacy can have a significant impact on both individuals and businesses, leading to poor decision-making and missed opportunities. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you continued to invest in something simply because you had already invested so much? How did it turn out, and what did you learn from the experience? Have you ever felt absolutely certain that something would go your way, only to be proven wrong? This is what's called the overconfidence bias, which refers to the tendency to overestimate one's own abilities, knowledge, or future performance. According to a study by the University of California, Berkeley, 81% of drivers believed that they were better than the average driver. Overconfidence bias can have significant consequences in decision-making. For example, a business owner might be so confident in their product or service that they fail to properly assess the competition, resulting in poor sales or even failure of the business. In investment, overconfidence bias can lead to poor decision-making and investment losses. Similarly, investors may overestimate their ability to pick winning stocks, leading to poor investment decisions and financial losses. In personal life, overconfidence bias can lead to poor decisions in various aspects, such as health choices, relationships, and career choices. A job candidate may overestimate their qualifications, leading to an unsuccessful job interview, or a person may overestimate their abilities, believing they can easily complete a difficult task, or underestimating the risks of certain activities like gambling or substance abuse. Being aware of overconfidence bias and actively seeking out feedback and information from others can help mitigate its effects. It's essential to recognize that nobody is perfect and that everyone has blind spots, and by being humble and open to feedback, we can make better decisions. So, the question is, how can you recognize and overcome your own overconfidence bias in your decision-making processes? Confirmation bias is a common cognitive bias that affects our decision-making. Have you ever found yourself seeking out information that confirms your existing beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts them? It turns out that this is a natural human tendency, and we all do it to some extent. A study by Yale University found that people who identify as conservative or liberal are more likely to accept information that confirms their existing beliefs and reject information that contradicts them, highlighting the prevalence of confirmation bias in politics. But confirmation bias isn't just limited to academics and politics, it can also have serious consequences in business and everyday life. For example, a manager might be so convinced of the success of a new product that they ignore market research showing a lack of demand, leading to a costly failure. Or a person might refuse to seek out medical treatment because they only look for information that confirms their belief that they are healthy, leading to serious health problems. The key to overcoming confirmation bias is to actively seek out information that contradicts our beliefs and consider it objectively. This can be challenging, but it is crucial for making well-informed decisions. So the next time you find yourself dismissing opposing viewpoints or only seeking out information that confirms your beliefs, take a step back and try to consider all angles of the situation. The framing effect is a cognitive bias that affects our decision-making. Research has shown that the way information is presented to us can influence the choices we make, even when the options are technically the same. According to a study conducted by Tversky and Kahneman, the founders of behavioral economics, people were more likely to take risks when a situation was framed in terms of potential gains, but were more risk-averse when it was framed in terms of potential losses. This bias is not limited to financial decisions, but can also be seen in everyday life. For example, a restaurant menu that highlights the health benefits of certain dishes may lead customers to choose those options over others, even if they are not actually healthier or more appealing. In business, the framing effect can be used to influence consumer behavior and decision-making. Advertisements that frame a product as a must-have or limited-time offer can create a sense of urgency and encourage consumers to make a purchase. However, the framing effect can also be used to deceive or manipulate consumers. For example, a company may frame a price increase as a small adjustment to avoid negative reactions from customers. Studies have shown that the framing effect is a pervasive bias that affects people in all walks of life. In fact, a study conducted by Shafir, Diamond, and Tversky found that even highly educated professionals such as doctors and lawyers were susceptible to the framing effect. The consequences of the framing effect can be significant, as it can lead to suboptimal decision-making and missed opportunities. By understanding and avoiding this bias, we can make better choices and achieve more positive outcomes in our personal and professional lives. Do you think the framing effect is more prevalent in certain industries or types of decision-making? Why or why not? As we've seen throughout this video, decision-making biases can have a powerful impact on the choices we make in both our personal and professional lives. From the availability bias to the sunk cost fallacy, these biases can lead us astray and prevent us from making the best possible decisions. But the good news is that by recognizing these biases and being mindful of how they affect us, we can take steps to overcome them. By seeking out diverse perspectives, challenging our assumptions, and being open to new information, we can make more thoughtful and informed decisions that lead to better outcomes. So the next time you're faced with a decision, take a moment to reflect on the biases that may be influencing your thinking. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more informative content on decision-making and other topics. And we invite you to share your own experiences and insights in the comments below. Thank you for watching.